Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Hello, I'm Heather Bennett, a business advisor, marketing strategist, and board director, and your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast featuring middle market owners and experts talking about founding, growing, and exiting their businesses on their own terms. Past guests include Jody Jankowski, founder of Blackline, Arlen Sorensen, and Kelly Shroud, founder and chairman of Data Vision. This episode is brought to you by Newport LLC, a team of seasoned C-suite executives who help CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and exit their businesses successfully and on their own terms. Newport LLC is a winner of the prestigious Inc. Magazine 2025 Power Partner Award, a list of elite B2B companies from across the globe. To see the entire list, go to inc.com/Power Partner Awards. To learn more about Newport, visit us at newportllc.com or find us on LinkedIn. Before introducing today's guests, I would like to thank my friends at the National Speakers Association, especially Marty Constant and Mark J. Carter, for introducing me to my guest a few years ago. You can find Marty and Mark on LinkedIn. Today's guest is Mikki Williams. Mikki Williams is a global celebrity speaker, a certified speaking professional, a member of the prestigious Speaker Hall of Fame, a TEDx speaker, a transformational storyteller, and listed in Forbes as one of the top executive speech coaches. She was chosen as one of the best speakers in the U.S. by Meetings and Convention magazines, along with Tony Robbins, Bill Gates, and Jay Leno. Mikki is a former award-winning Vistage speaker, the world's leading executive organization and master chair of two of their peer advisory boards, and is now honored as chair emeritus. Just when she thought she was semi-retired, she went viral on social media with over 1 million views and is now officially a digital content creator, aka an influencer at the young age of 82. Based in Naples, Florida, this busy entrepreneur also runs speaker schools, the Mickey Mouth Club, Keynote Camp, Outrageous Orators, and she has spoken in every U.S. state, every Canadian province, and every continent except Antarctica, where she can't wear her signature stilettos. Her business is anchored in her signature philosophy, which I know she embodies fully, having met her and heard her speak. Be outrageous. It's the only place that isn't crowded. Mikki, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here.
Well, Heather, thank you so much. I'm excited about spending time with you today.
Awesome. So let's get right into it. How did you get started in the business of speaking?
I think, I have to gather my thoughts for a second. With 11 careers, all of a sudden they jumbled together when you asked me that question. I had just sold my last business, which was a health club. And for the first time in my life, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Every business I started, I had one leg in exit and one leg in the next field. And this time I had nothing. So I took a year off. I did well from my sale. I decided to just figure it out. And really, I did it by such a scientific method. I took a piece of paper and I divided it in half. On the left side of the paper, I wrote down the objectives for my next career. I figured if I didn't know what it is, maybe I could back into it. And on the right side of the paper, I listed all my talents, hobbies, interests, and passions. And I looked at the two to get that proverbial aha, and nothing happened. And in the course of the year, I picked up the paper and put it down. And then finally, I did get the proverbial aha. But on the left side of the paper, there were 4 objectives. Number 1 was travel. I had never really traveled. I'd always been tied to a facility or my family. Number 2 was glamour. I like glamour. I come out of a show business background, so I'm not going to be sitting in some accountant office, or nothing against accountants, but I just like glamour. Number 3 was unlimited financial opportunity, no financial glass ceiling. It was going to have an upside where my skills, talent, and my tenacity would give me what I wanted. And number 4 was people, because I love people. So I had these kind of generic, kind of specific objectives. And on the right side, I had eclecticism. I had cooking and dancing and fitness and all kinds of different things. And then the aha was, at that time, they were opening spas in California, destination spas. And that was my first aha. I thought, well, I could do that. I was in fitness, I was in cooking. So I went back to college to get my master's degree in hospitality management. They gave me half my master's for life experience. So I start doing that. And now I'm about midlife. I'm late 40s and I'm thinking, well, I don't want to climb the ladder and find out it's against the wrong building. So I decide to go out and practice what I'm learning in hospitality management. And I kind of pimp myself out to our local Hyatt to work in the hotel atmosphere. And I liked it, but it didn't have all four objectives, and I was not going to settle. So I started networking in the hotel industry, and people would say, well, I said, what else do you do in the hotels besides the obvious? And they said, well, we work with meeting planners. I said, well, what's a meeting planner? They said, these are people that get hired to plan meetings, so they get wined and dined all over oh, that sounds very glamorous. Okay, so I fly to Washington, D.C., I get certified in convention and meeting management. Poof, I'm a meeting planner. And then I start planning meetings, and quickly I realize it's a very behind-the-scenes logistical job, and that's not me. Look at me, that's not me. So I started asking meeting planners, what else do you do besides planning? We hire speakers. Well, what do you mean? What's a speaker? You know, the people who address audiences. I said, well, I've done that in every career I've been in when I was in fitness. Well, you were an industry speaker. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, we hire professional speakers. I said, what's the difference? Professional speakers get paid. Really? And there you have my new career.
That's amazing. And I love that it came at a point where you had already worked in other businesses and careers, and you had, like you said, that life experience, which gave you half your master's. And I think that's something that we need to pay attention to, especially now when things are changing so dramatically in post-secondary education and how people are learning and what the job market's even going to look like in 5 years. Who knows? Yes. And so I think that idea of going out and just getting experience and applying that is so important. So, all right, so you've started this out. So, and I know speaking business is tough, like really tough to get into. So why do you think you were so successful? What did you do that helped you get to that success?
Well, let's go back to my mantra about be outrageous. And back then I was beyond outrageous. I was flamboyant and outrageous. And when I went to my first NSA meeting, I was not well received at all. I thought they all thought I was a one-night wonder. Look at the way she dresses, look at the size of her hair, look at her jewelry. And so it was not a very auspicious beginning. Other than one person, there was a very famous referee who passed away a year or two ago, Jim Tunney, who was a speaker. And his assistant, Nancy Hirsch, was the only person who befriended me at that first meeting and believed in me. And we kept in touch. And, I just said this. I told you I was just on a British Wire. And she asked where my fashion sense came from. I had a mom who instilled a lot of confidence in me as a little girl. And I think that has always helped me being my own person growing up, not caring what other people think of how I dress or what I look like or what I do. And so when I went to NSA, I was just being me, authentically me, and it didn't fit the mold. So that was, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can identify with that discrimination is not only by a gender or sex or color of your skin, it's by the way you dress, the way you look or anything. And fast forward, I love this part of the story I don't know, 17 years later, maybe, I was being inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame. And I hadn't seen Nancy Hirsch since that first year. And she was the first person I thought of, because how full circle was that from my beginning to being in the Hall of Fame. And I found her in her 80s in California, and I flew her in for the ceremony. And it was very, very special. A lot of people still remember it, that I was able to honor her that night as being that one person who believed in me. And that's all it takes, one person who believes in you. And I also got my sweet revenge in my acceptance speech in a very professional, classy way, but I got it.
Oh, and that's so true. I think there's also a power in being underestimated, which I think may have played a role for when you started your speaking career. I'm sure a couple of the times when the curtains opened or you walked on stage, whatever audience or industry, whatever group you were speaking to went, wait a minute, I actually have to pay
Heather, it's
attention
a
to
story of
this.
my life. It's in every business I've owned and more so in the speaking business. And I loved it. And I played off of it because you know what? I knew that after 15 minutes of their judgment, that I was going to have them in the power of my little hand. And that was always a fun thing for me
That is
because I am
awesome.
authentically who I am. And authenticity plays well in every area of our life if people can just be who they are. And I found that over and over and over again.
That is beautiful. So, I know you talked about earlier how you've built and exited a number of businesses, and that's always an interesting thing. Being a serial entrepreneur, you said your mother gave you a lot of confidence to be authentic, but where do you think that desire and that drive to be an entrepreneur and to build, and not just build, but build and sell businesses, where did that come from?
I think I'd have to go back to the fact that I'm not risk averse as most people are. I also embrace change as most people don't. That's been my experience. And tragically, I think it comes from the early part of my life. My husband was sadly killed in a car accident when I was 29, and I was left with a 2-year-old child and no money and no job. And the old cliche saying, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, for me, it did. And so I've always approached everything else as what's the worst thing that can happen? So the fact that I am risk free and change embracing, I think it just takes away from the fact of why I start businesses and don't worry about whether I sell them or I walk away or I close the door or how much money I make or any of those things that I know plague a lot of people who build businesses and sell them. I've been asked that question before, and that's the only answer I could really come up with. I wasn't born that way. I think circumstances in life has made me that way, willing to take chances.
I love that. It's such an important part of the entrepreneur's journey is that balance of risk and decision making and
Mhm.
having the guts to go through with it.
Yeah,
Um,
truly.
so which one of your businesses do you think you've learned the most about business from?
Oh, that's an easy question because simultaneously, while I was a professional speaker, I was also a Vistage speaker, Vistage being the world's largest executive organization. And then one day they called me up and said, congratulations, you've been nominated to be a chair. And I said, no, 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 you've got me mixed up. I'm one of your speakers. I had no aspirations or visions of that. And I did wind up becoming a chair for 20 years, a very successful master chair with lots of awards. And I loved every minute of it. And I think I grew so much as a person and as a business person by coaching all these CEOs and key employees. There's no doubt my whole persona today with my expertise and my growth, I attribute to those years of coaching the execs, running the businesses, and being involved in their personal and professional lives and learning along with them.
That's amazing. And let's talk about that. As a Vistage chair, from what I understand, what that is you are working with executives to help them grow their businesses. And a lot of times they are the CEO, they are the founder.
Right.
Um, what are some of the greatest lessons that you learned from those Vistage executives about business?
I think I came to appreciate with, again, the cliche of work-life balance. There isn't any because I'd watch and learn and listen to what some of them were doing. And again, a lot of it had to do with the age of themselves or the age and stage of their businesses. So a lot of a lot of Vistage chairs, I classify them in 3 categories from my own experience of being with the organization for 20 years. You have those that are very data centric. They run their groups that way. It's all about charts and graphs and percentages and numbers. You have those that are holding hands and singing Kumbaya at every meeting. And then you had me, which took a balance of both of those things and tried to create and work with the whole person, not just their business title. So just because you were the CEO of Open Arms doesn't mean that you're not a dad or a son or a brother or something like that. And I think I learned a lot from myself personally by looking at them as a whole person and then reflecting it back on my life in terms of what they're doing right or what they can improve on. And I would apply that to myself.
That's amazing. And did you see patterns in terms of the leaders that you worked with, like what leadership skills, what traits often indicated that they were going to be successful? I know you mentioned the ability to change and
Yes.
having that agility. I think
Field
that's
change.
part of it. But what are some of the other ones when you think about, I mean, it's a long time to be a Vistage chair, and you've worked
Yes.
with a number of executives. What skills, what traits, what did you see when you would meet those people that you'd be like, oh yeah, this one's going to be successful? They'll get
Absolutely.
it.
Well, next to being, as you just mentioned, decision makers, you could tell in an interview whether they say yes, I want to be part, or no, as opposed to I'm not sure, I have to think about it, I got to talk to my spouse, etc. So decision making to me is bottom line in terms of a characteristic. I also like and look for competitiveness, and as well as the camaraderie gene that I wanted them to have. It was very important to me that I was not looking just at business expertise, but also at personality. Consequently, one of my greatest compliments, and I just had dinner last night with one of my former CEOs, is that I have a great ability to curate people. And I have found that I've accepted that compliment because I just came back from going to Canyon Ranch with 13 girlfriends who had never met, who also just fell in love with each other. And someone used the same expression. You have a unique ability to curate people. And I think it's because I looked at that whole person. I wasn't looking, I need an accountant. This person's really good in math. I wanted to know that they were fully rounded. And consequently, they've made lifelong friendships. They weren't just a Vistage group, leaving or expiring. And they never left. The retention was there when I retired. They'd been together for almost as long as I'd been a chair. And I think that shows something about it.
Okay.
I was
So
also
then,
very tough. I must tell you that, and they would tell you that too. Accountability was the big driver in my group, and I'm very good at holding them accountable. That can be a very intimidating group, executives, and some have really strong personalities. But I think the other thing that I learned was the importance of it and how it helped them in their lives and businesses. Again, kind of shining back on me.
absolutely. There's two words I think about when coaching executives, and it's really accountability and coachability.
Yes. Exactly.
Can you get them where they're going to go? And if you don't have both of those,
well, that was easy for me because I was very good at firing.
Good.
Yeah, I had a lot of rules around attendance, around participation, but I also did it in a very Mickeyized way. It was fun. If you were late to the meeting, you had to sing. They didn't want to sing. So, if they were late in posting online their monthly summary, they had to send an apology to the group. If we had a new member, they had to be a host and sit with them all day. So I took a lot of it from the way I was brought up and what I think is really proper behavior and put it inside the group as well. And again, I would watch people. I'd go as a speaker, I had a real advantage, Heather, because I was a speaker and a chair. So I had a 360 view of what went well and what didn't, or as I like to call it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'd go to a meeting and I'd see they have a new member or a prospect who'd be just standing around. And I thought, that's terrible. That would be like someone coming to a party at your house and no one walking up and introducing themselves or anything. So I took a lot of my values from my upbringing and my own life experience and applied it to the group dynamics. And I think that's what helped them stay together. They stayed because they were so well bonded with each other. And we had a lot of rituals, and I believe rituals create bonding.
Oh, that's so important. I do think every executive should learn how to throw a party, a dinner party. I think that would teach them a lot about people, especially when they think about building their executive committee or bringing on new C-suite members.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a unique talent. So it's so good to hear you have that. I'm not surprised. So tell me about some of your proudest moments.
In business or in life?
Oh, we could do both. Let's do one of each.
Oh, in business. I would have to think, and I'm not sure I know the exact one, but let me back into it. I just came off, as I said to you, taking, 12 girlfriends to Canyon Ranch. It's my annual goddess birthday trip. We go somewhere different every year. And people asked, how was that for you, for your birthday and everything? I said, the greatest part of it was I felt like a mother taking 13 kids to Disneyland, watching them get so excited about their first experience. And that truly from my heart. And I told them that the last night we kind of sat around the fire. What was this week like? They had never been there, and the experience was mind-boggling for them. And I got so much joy out of that. And I think that I see that pattern in my life and my businesses, that whatever I create, because I am a creative and I love organizing, the joy of it is getting that reward of other people's experience of what I've created for them. I don't know if that answers your question or makes sense, but that's what really came to mind.
I just think that's a wonderful way to celebrate your birthday. That's great.
Yeah.
and such a gift. Okay, so business-wise, proudest moment.
Proudest moment business-wise. I've received a lot of awards in business, and I have to say every one of them are very special to me because they honor some kind of achievement or anything like that. And, the one that comes to mind of all the awards was one from the United Nations as the Outstanding Connecticut Woman of the Decade. That was pretty high up there with awards, but no different than one of my executives selling their company for more than the value of it and giving me some credit for helping it grow to that level. So none of them, whether it's a tangible award or an intangible, like a feeling, really stand out as the one. I am so blessed by so many of them and by so many experiences that I've had throughout my lifetime. I remember in my professional speaking career, I was speaking in Israel, did a tour of Israel, and the last day they took us out in Jeeps into the Negev desert. And once we were so far out in the desert, you couldn't even see a horizon. It's like being on the ocean. They stopped and we got out in front of this giant rock formation and we walked around it, and they had set a formal table, tablecloths, crystal and china in the middle of the desert as our last meal. And my going away gift was a picture of this formal table in the middle of the Negev desert. I have experiences like that I just don't take for granted. I reflect back on at 82, I reflect back on a life really well lived. I've had some, at this point with some time, I'm going through photos and things and I'm going, wow, I really did have a pretty cool life. So
That's amazing. And you talked about, so we'll talk about what's next, but before that, so transitions, you decide to, you've had a great run with Vistage and you're ready for something different. How did that come about? What was the trigger, or, what happened when you were like, okay, I've really made a big impact. I'm ready to let that go right now.
The answer to that question, which is a really good one, lies in the fact that I've had 10 different companies. I'm very goal oriented and I set goals and I hold myself accountable. And when I get to my goal, one or two things happen. I feel really accomplished and know it's ready to move on, or I'm just bored and I know it's ready to move on. And I'm always good at letting go. Again, that's a hard thing for a lot of people, but that goes back to embracing change. I never look backward. I always look forward. And even this year, I've been doing speaker schools for 30 years. I've trained most of all the top speakers in Vistage. And in October, that's going to be my last school. And, people are already saying, how do you feel about that? Once I make my decision, I'm good with it. And the same thing with Vistage. When I left Vistage, when I left speaking, I have maybe a 1 or 2 year rumination process. Should I, shouldn't I? What if? And then I wake up one day and I know, I just know. And then when I say I know I'm done. And there's no regrets. And no, if I look back on what it was, not what I think it could be or what I didn't do or anything like that. And I've always, I have 3 people looking to buy my speaker school. I sold most of my businesses. Few I closed the door. One was a real bomb. So I've had my share. I think I wrote to you, I've had a C Corp, an S Corp, a partnership. I've had everything, which was probably what qualified me to be a Vistage chair. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of my answer to that.
That's fantastic. So what's next?
That is the best question of all. Semi-retired, I hate that word retired, but once I gave up speaking in Vistage, I just kept coaching in speaker school, and I was fine with that. And then one day I was having coffee with a friend who said, "You should go on TikTok." I said, "Why would I do that? That's for 20-year-olds." She said, "Because you're very inspiring, and these young people need inspiration. Look at you. You're 82. Look at your energy. You look at your fitness. Look at the way you dress." And I thought, I've never even seen TikTok. So I go home that night and I call a 17-year-old neighbor. And I said, "Okay, come over. I'm going to make a video for TikTok." I still had not even looked at it, so I didn't know what it was. She comes in. She says, "Well, what do you want to make it on?" I said, "I don't know. What do people do on TikTok?" "Well, they just talk about life, anything." I said, "Well, I'm comfortable talking. That's not a problem. Do you want to change clothes?" "No, I like what I'm wearing. I'm fine." "Well, what's interesting in your house?" I said, "My closet. I made a bedroom into closet." She said, "All right, let's do that." And without even thinking, because as a professional speaker, I don't have to think. So she turns the microphone on, which is simple for me, and kind of goes, "Okay, go." And the first things out of my mouth are, "Hi, I'm Mikki. I'm new to TikTok. I'm a natural 82-year-old. Welcome to my closet." She calls me a couple hours later and she says, "You're trending." What does that mean? I don't even know that word. She said, "That means you're gaining people. They're watching and they're sharing it." I said, "Oh, that's nice." The next morning, she calls me up. She said, "You're over 1.2 million. And without going any further, skip to now, I am a full-time digital content creator on all the social media platforms, TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and you name it. I got a manager in Boston, an agent in LA, a PR firm in Connecticut, and I got a new career."
That is outstanding. Believe it or not, not surprising given, and I love that you started in your closet. That's such like a signature, like start from that like place of authenticity.
Yeah,
This is who I am.
I'm learning the lingo. What are your pillars? My pillars are beauty, fashion, fitness, and lifestyle. And those are things I've kind of been an expert at all my life because it's the way I live my life. So I'm having fun. And indeed, it's so much like professional speaking, Heather, because it's the same thing. Instead of getting an evaluation, "Oh, you did so great. I loved your speech. You inspired me to," I get it every day. I get it, especially they'll write things like, "I see my future and it is bright." Or they'll just write goals with an exclamation point. And it for me, that's what it's always been about. It's about inspiring people. It's about legacy. It's about the best thing that I could do to make my mark on this lovely planet or the gift of life that I had is to inspire others. And so I'm having a ball.
I love that. Okay, so what should your followers be looking for you to bring to social media in the next, we'll say, 6 months? What are you excited about sharing with them?
It's a great question because in some ways I'm still trying to figure this out. This is only 5 months in and there's so much to learn. And that's the hard part for me. I don't want you to think this is easy. The technology side of it that comes so natural to these younger folks does not come natural to me. And I don't really enjoy that part. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I just joined Linktree and Shopify and all these things that I'm learning. It's a growth curve that I don't think I've ever had this steep. And I'm also finding my footing. Yeah, they love those 4 aspects of me. I want to put more of my speaking, my storytelling into some of my videos. A lot of these videos are very short. My stories aren't. And so I want to start bringing more of that in. And they also write what they're looking for. They want to see my skincare routine. They want to know my fitness routine. They want to know where I shop. How do I put my outfits together? And some about my life. So I'm still trying to find my balance and my footing as to what they want, not necessarily. I used to say this, I still do to all the speakers I coach about don't should on your audience. It's not what you think they should know. It's what do they want to know. Right. And so, and in some ways I'm trying to figure that out and stay growing as I do that. And as long as I see I think I have 52,000 followers right now and over 400,000 likes and stuff. And again, I'll go to AI and go, is it good if you have, because I have no perspective on this industry. So in some ways, I'm so naive and I'm learning as I'm going and growing. That's really what it's all about.
That is outstanding. That is outstanding. And it sounds like this is what you're passionate about and what you're trying to do next, which is great. I'll be watching to see how this goes because it's a very exciting place to be, and the fact that you can influence so many more people than just a group from Vistage or just a room full of people as a keynote speaker. This is so far beyond that, and I think that's wonderful that you're able to reach out that far.
Someone said that to me the other day. It's almost like you've come full circle, and excuse me. You're not just speaking to thousands, you're speaking to millions and billions now. And it's the same process in a sense. So that's what I'm trying to embrace. And I'm also more inclined on the other side of it. I love the aspect I'm getting collaborations and partnerships and sponsorships with brands and gifts. And that's the glamour part that I always like in my objectives that I'm starting to really enjoy and really excited about making some of these ads for these big companies and getting into sponsorship. So now it's starting to swell, and I'm inundated every day by opportunities, which are really, really exciting to me. So I'm embracing it, and we'll see where it goes.
That's fantastic. Okay, so who are your mentors? It sounds like since you're embarking on this new career, who are your mentors, or who have your mentors been in the past, and what was their best piece of advice to you?
It's a question I often get asked, and there's really only one person. I know I've had many, but there's one person that stands out more than any. When my husband had passed away, I was doing choreography for community theater. I was a professional dancer, as I said. And so as a wife and mother, I still wanted to be involved, so I would be choreographing a community musical. And I was doing that for Fiddler on the Roof at the time. And the director was a woman named Brenda Lewis Cooper, who was a very famous opera star during that period. And I remember right after the accident, she'd come over to the house and she said something to me about how much time are you going to take off? And I said, I remember it was a very grief-filled time for me, but she was a very strong woman. Other than my mother, this is the biggest role model mentor that I can think of in my whole life. She was like, get up and get out. You're coming back to work. You're young. You're 29. You got a 2-year-old kid. You got a whole life ahead of you. You don't have time to sit here. I mean, she just spoke to me in a way that nobody else ever did. And I think she changed my life in that period, just by who she was and what she said and her confidence. She was a role model before women were really role models or really strong personalities and stuff. So when people say, who are your mentors? She's just the one person that I always focus on because it made such an impact in my life.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful that she was able to be there for you when you needed just that advice.
Yeah. And, in Vistage also, there's a wonderful group of women chairs. We're a small minority in a sea of male chairs in a male organization that's mostly male members and stuff. And they're all so supportive. And I think I could almost name all of them as mentors in some way of how do you navigate through this male-dominated field? How do you become the female to all the male executives? So what do you do at your meeting? How do you run your one-to-ones? So I think along the way, there's no one, but so many of the women chairs were mentors to me in that process. And in the speaking industry, none were supportive to me except Nancy Hirsch. So I built that business by the seat of my pants, my confidence, my risk, my change and stuff. So I'm not giving credit there. But after a while, after acceptance came in, when they saw I was a force to be reckoned with and not someone to be laughed at, then there were a lot of people who were very supportive and were very helpful. So it's an umbrella term for me more than it's naming the individual people.
That is wonderful. So what are a few of your daily rituals? What do you do because you are so incredibly impactful and high energy and you've built so much and helped so many people. What are some of the daily rituals? So maybe this is something you could do in one of your TikTok videos that you do every day to get yourself ready to be that awesome business person.
And I love the question because I mentioned even with my group, rituals. I just believe in rituals. Call them habits. At Canyon Ranch this week, they went to a course called habit stacking, which is a little bit like rituals. And mine some are simple, some are more complex. So I start the day, I get up and I go to get the coffee that my husband has ready for me. I come back to bed, I put on a mask and I meditate for 10 minutes. After the meditation, I read the book that I'm reading of the week. After that, I get down on the floor and do my planks and some basic exercises before I go to the gym. But then I get back up in bed. Now the coffee has cooled off and I'm drinking it while I'm checking all my social media accounts. And so that's my morning ritual. Then I get dressed to go to the gym. I go to the gym every day from 8 in the morning till noon. And then my day is then in the office from noon to 6. And then we live in a very active young community. So social events and that's kind of my daily ritual.
That's amazing. And I'm hearing so many of the things that a lot of the entrepreneurs and founders I've talked to, that dedication to fitness and health, having those moments, whether it's with a cup of coffee or something where you can just meditate, think. So very consistent with what I've seen with the successful founders I've interviewed. So very
it's
good.
Funny because, I've written several books over the years, but I've never finished my memoir, which I've been asked about forever. And I've tried every method and every person has tried to help me in every way. And I am in full swing. I read this in Small Habits, I think, or something that triggers you to do what you know you have to do or don't want to do. So number one, I am now dictating my memoir into AI, who's called George. So George greets me. Hi, George, ready for next chapter. But the trigger is when I hear the door close when my husband has left. I stop whatever I'm doing, and that's my habit trigger to get me to go to the computer to dictate the memoir. So that's been very helpful for me, is both of those. The fact that I can dictate, because it's easier for me to speak than write. I like writing, but it takes too much time. I'm much more efficient at speaking. Yay, finally, I've been writing this memoir for 30 years. And now it's going to be like War and Peace because I've waited for so long.
That's phenomenal. And yes, you'll have to please let me know when it does come out so I can support you.
Everyone will know when it comes out. Trust me.
We'll get you back on the podcast so you can support your book launch. I would love that. So I have one final question. And Mikki, this has been so much fun. I could talk to you all day. So one last question before I ask it. I want to point people to your website at mikkiwilliams.com. And of course, all the social platforms. Which just such a great adventure. I'm so happy for you. It's so exciting. So the last question.
Wait, before you do, let me say this. Mm-hmm. My website is my Speaker and Vistage website. It's a placeholder. Okay. I have it, although you can still register for the October Speaker School on it. But other than that, it's been a placeholder that I'm now working to redo. And in my industry, as I call it now, it becomes what's called a portfolio. Still a website, but a portfolio. So more importantly, for people who'd be interested, would be some of my handles on some of my social media. But what's interesting too is my TikTok, my main one, which is at Mikki Go-Go. And my friends nickname me Go-Go because obvious, right? So at Mikki Go-Go, but most of my friends will go, I'm not on TikTok. Of course you're not. You're too old. So they'll say, well, I'm on Instagram. Okay, that's easy. Mikki Williams Unlimited, UNLTD. Well, I'm not on that. Okay, you're older than that. You're on Facebook. Or you're just business. You're on LinkedIn. You can find me by my name on all of those, but it's been a funny sequence to try to, well, I'm going to join TikTok because I want to watch those videos, that kind of thing. Anyway, sorry. Closing question. And thank you. You asked many great questions. It's been a lot of fun, Heather.
Oh, I'm so happy. This is, and yes, so we'll make sure that the production team gets all of those included in the show notes so you'll get lots of new followers.
Thank you.
The last question, what is a hard lesson you learned while starting and growing your many, many successful businesses that you'd like to help other CEOs, entrepreneurs, and founders avoid?
It's actually an easy question for me. I've been asked it a lot, and I don't know if it's the answer people would expect. It's listen to everybody, especially mentors, people you respect, people who are more successful, and let that sit. And after it's all done, listen to your own instinct. It's played out for me over and over and over again. Because I do what somebody else does, it just doesn't fit. If I listen just because they've made a lot of money, it doesn't feel right. So I love having all those people who share their success or their mentorship or their advice. But now I've learned that when I take it and listen to my own instincts, I'm always right.
That's great advice. Really good advice. Mikki, thank you so much for sharing your story, your insights, your experience, your energy. I'm so very grateful for you.
Thank you, Heather. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Great questions, great conversation. I've enjoyed myself, and I hope your listeners do as well.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoyed this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.